I picked that song because a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have stood up here. But I attended a gorgeous women Bible study, and one of the first things that Sharon encouraged us to do was to do a vision board. And we picked a word, and my word for the year was bold. And how can you be bold if you say no? So when she asked me to speak on graciousness, thank you, I said yes. And like the song says, I'm going to say yes in the singing, I'm going to say yes for the running, yes for the walking, yes to the waiting, yes. And even though my legs are shaking, I'm going to praise him. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what graciousness means and gracious hospitality, because I think it's kind of a lost art in today's society. We're all so busy, we're all in such a rush that even if we're at the grocery store, do we even look at the people around us, or are we on our phone? Are we thinking about, oh, I have to get this and I have to get that, and these people are coming? That we miss opportunities to really reach out to somebody who needs just a smile or a kind word. As women, we often find ourselves as the role of hostess and caring for our families and our friends and our work relationships, and it's a lot, so we need to lean on God. So let's begin by diving into what graciousness means and what Merriam-Webster Dictionary says. It says, being gracious means being generous, helpful, showing compassion, and being kind and courteous. So I'd like you to imagine two women, both with a bucket, an invisible bucket, of course, but it's real to them. The first woman comes up to the second woman, and she takes a compliment. You look really nice today, Martha. So she puts it in her bucket, and the woman smiles. The next day she comes and says, oh, those cookies you made last night, they were delicious. She scoops another compliment into her bucket. And the days go on, and she gives her compliments, and she gives her smiles, and the woman feels so uplifted because she's been appreciated, and she feels like she's been seen. But then it could also go the other way, and a woman could dip from the woman. I don't know why they picked you. I could do it a lot better. Or, are you really going to wear that today? You know, we have to make a choice as a gracious woman. Are we going to be a bucket filler, or are we going to be a bucket dipper? Because every interaction we have that opportunity to lift the person up or put them down. You know, a few years ago, morale was really down where I was working, and we decided to implement a program to lift employee spirit. And I found this book. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. It's called How Full is Your Bucket? And it's based on that concept of being a bucket filler. We started with the department heads. There were about 12 women in the group, and it was a time right before COVID. So people were having symptoms, but we didn't really know to identify it as COVID yet. So people were afraid of what was coming, and you had to have a gracious heart with people because fear can just rip you of everything that you believe in. So we picked the department heads to start with, and for each person, I made a little drop, like a drop of water. And I tried to think of some special quality that that woman had, because we all have different gifts. Some are organizers, some are background people, which I usually like to be. I like to be in the background, give me something to do and I'll do it. But everybody has a gift. If we all have the same gift, we're not going to be as useful to God. So one might say, you have the special gift of speaking under pressure. And one person, I said, you have the special gift of organization, and you make our team work so much better. And it was fun to watch the women as they read their drops, because they'd laugh and they'd talk, and some of them would say, yeah, I see that quality in you too. But I didn't know how successful the program really was or what it meant until about 3 months later. And I went into the physical therapist department, and I was sitting there talking to the therapist, and I looked up at her computer, and there was that drop taped to the corner of her computer. And she saw me kind of smile, and she's like, you know, that was the first time since I've worked here that anybody told me I was appreciated and that I was doing a good job. So, you know, it's such a little thing to say thank you to somebody or I appreciate you, so why don't we do it? I'd like to start with the story of Martha and Mary in the Bible because they're a great example of hospitality in the home. Luke 10:38-42. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, Don't you see that my sister has left me to do all the work? Tell her to help me." And the Lord answered, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and I will not take it from her." So quick question. Are you team Mary or are you team Martha? Are you a doer, a doubter, or an "I don't think so"? The first time I read this story, I definitely identified with Martha. Think about it. Jesus was coming to her house for dinner. This wasn't just an occasional visitor. It wasn't the person who lived next door. This was Jesus, the Son of God, one who was being persecuted by the Pharisees at the time. So Martha was brave. She didn't worry about if she was going to be challenged or persecuted because she was inviting Jesus into her house. She just did it. And she was a doer, because I'm sure all day she was out there preparing, going to the market, getting the food for the evening, deciding where all the disciples were going to sleep in her house. So I can just see Martha that morning, and I think that some of us get like this at home when we're preparing. You know, we have our apron on, we have our pot, we're stirring, and we're looking around, and things seem to be going good till we look in the living room. And maybe it's all the guys watching football, or the kids are over here, or your sister's out there and she's not helping. So you start to bang the utensils a little bit heavier and faster. And, you know, you're like, "Jesus, why isn't anybody helping me?" And sometimes we get so focused on that nobody wants to be served by us anymore, because we're angry and we're banging things, and that does not lend to peaceful conversation. You know, it's funny because my husband kind of convicted me with this week. I had told him what I was speaking on. And the other night I had my apron on, my Martha apron, and I'd fixed this lovely meal, and I had the table set, and everybody came to eat. And then I remembered something in the kitchen, so I jumped up, came back and sat down, remembered something else, jumped up again. And here's my husband, "Martha, Martha, Martha." And it was so true. And that's what made me think, you know, you're right. Here I am, I'm still running around. I prepared this meal, but I'm not even sitting down with the people that I made it for. So how often do we as women do this? We want to get up in the morning and start our days in God's word, but we get busy. So instead of sitting and praying and doing a devotional and quiet time, we start running. And we're running and we're running and we're running all day until we're so exhausted that we get home at night and we just fall in the chair. And then we're like, "I'm sorry, God, but maybe tomorrow." You know, I once heard a pastor say, you can tell a lot about a person in their heart if you look at their calendar and if you look at their checkbook. Maybe our calendars are too full of things that don't really need to be there, and maybe we need to actually write in, "This time in the morning, I'm going to sit and I'm going to spend time in the Word," or "I'm going to attend this Bible study," or like you did, you decided to attend this conference. If we don't set that time aside, we are Martha, and nothing is Mary. Let's talk about Mary. While Martha's love language was acts of service, Mary's was love language and quality time. You know, what Martha was doing wasn't wrong. What she was doing was needed. She was serving God. She was serving people like we're supposed to do on earth. But what Mary was doing is what we're going to be doing for eternity one day. We're going to be worshiping at his feet. It's important to note that at this time in our culture, it wasn't normal or accepted for women to sit at Jesus' feet. That was a place for the men. So women weren't allowed to sit there or talk, and Jesus was redefining culture by allowing Mary to sit at his feet. I can just see the men looking at Mary. What does she think she's doing here? This is a man's place. She might be here to serve us coffee. "Mary, can you get me a cup of coffee with cream and sugar?" And Mary would have said, "I think you're looking for Martha, because I'm here for Bible study." So, two sisters, two women, two personalities, two love languages. I don't think that the word means for us to pick a side. We don't need to be Mary. We don't need to be Martha. We need to combine the two. We need to take the best of both women. Another example of hospitality and a gracious attitude is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. You know, she served people, the hungry, the dying, throughout her life, but she always made time every day to worship God and stay in his word. I'd like to read a quote that she wrote. I never look at the masses as my responsibility. I look only at the individual. I can love only one person at a time. I can feed only one person at a time. Just one. You get closer to Christ by coming closer to each other, so you begin as I begin. I picked up one person, and maybe if I didn't pick that one person, I wouldn't have picked up the others. The whole work is only a drop in the ocean. But if we don't put that drop in the ocean would be one drop less. She also said, I'm both Martha and Mary. I'm serving Jesus while I can on earth, but I'm also adoring him and being loved by him. So how do we begin to exhibit these qualities of hospitality? First of all, we try to be a bucket filler, which we talked about. Smile at somebody. If you don't feel like you can welcome people into your home for a Bible study or worship time, smile at people at the grocery store. If you see somebody who can't reach the top shelf, help them. Help somebody put a heavy bag in their car. Reach your neighbors. You know, the Bible says love your neighbor as yourself 8 times. Neighbors can be where you live, where you work, whoever you're with. Can you name 8 of your neighbors? Can you name 5 or 3 or maybe even 1? I think a lot of people aren't hospitable because they're afraid. They don't want people to see where they live, see the mess they have. They think I'm not the greatest hostess. They might not like the food that I make. I'm not a good cook. I love to bake. I can bake you a cake, but I don't think people really care about that. When I look back on the times that I was with people and enjoyed the time the most, it could have been a chicken salad at lunch. It could have been a pizza at night. So I bet 100% anyone in this room could invite somebody in their house today and have a wonderful time. Just eat something out of your fridge that's frozen, or order a pizza and just really enjoy time together like Mary did with Jesus. Don't get stuck in all the, I have to have this and that. There's a rule of 2 that somebody told me once, and it took me a while to learn it. If you want to have somebody in your house and be a gracious host, don't make 2 or more homemade items, because you're going to spend all your time cooking, you're going to be preparing, going to be wiped out when they get there. Order things. Make maybe one special thing, one special dessert, or one special item for the meal. And everything else, have it catered, or have people bring things when they ask. So just take a step, and if you're comfortable, start being a gracious woman in your neighborhood. Invite people in. It really took a tragedy in our neighborhood this year. The man who lived at the end of our street, his son took his life. The son had been a drug addict and came to his father for money, and he killed him that night. And after that tragedy, I met a lot of neighbors that I didn't even know, and we spent time together, and we shared our stories. And some of these people, you know, they spoke differently. They might have used different language than I do. They might live their life a different lifestyle. But I'm telling you, we all came together, and that's what Jesus did. He didn't just pick out people who were saved already. He went to the people who were hurting, or they had diseases, or they weren't living like they were supposed to be. So, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a bucket filler? Do you want to reach your neighbors? There's easy ways to do it. Start with preparation. Prepare your house every day like somebody's coming. Not like your mother-in-law's coming, where you're running around like a crazy person, making everybody crazy, but just clean off your counters and have a space. Maybe even have a clean sheet where if they need a place to stay for the night. Be that light for the people. You know, we put a big manger scene out in our yard at Christmas every year, and I'm very conscious when I do that, because I don't want people to say, oh, look at that manger scene and look at how they live. I want them to say, look at that manger scene, that's how they live. So, prepare. Manage your expectations. Follow that rule of 2. There are 3 people to consider when you're having guests. Yourself, the people who are coming, and the ones that we always forget, the people that we live with. Sometimes we get crazy and we're yelling at the kids to put things away, or our husband left something on the floor. We have to be gracious to our families. I think Sharon was saying, you know, you have to put your family there. God first, then your family, then your church, your friends. But first, you have to realize that you can be gracious to everybody. But if you come home and you don't share that gracious attitude with your family, what are you saying to them? So set your priorities and regularly spend time with God. Take that step from Mary. Learn to pray. Learn to say yes to God even the times that you don't feel you can do it, because you might not be perfect at it, but God will see it, and he'll see your yes, and he'll know that you're willing. So, my final thoughts. All of these years after Mary and Martha, we as women are still trying to strike a balance. Let's learn to be more like Martha in our expression of love by serving others, but let's especially strive to be like Mary and put God first and spend time with him daily. Let's love where we live, because even if we don't like the four walls that we look at every day, we are where we are for a purpose. That's our missionary field. Many people can go across the world and touch people's life, but many of us are here. And when we open our door, that's it. You know, a lot of times we don't even see our neighbors. We don't have porches like old neighborhoods did. We have fences, and we have gated communities. So we really have to purposely and mindfully try to reach our neighbors and get to know people. Be a gracious woman and provide attentive hospitality. When people are there, really spend time with them. Hear what they say. I remember the time when I went to see my brother, and I was so surprised my sister-in-law remembered everything. She had my favorite creamer. She had the peach tea I liked. She planned a day to go to an antique festival because she knew I loved it. And then she had a Hallmark movie that night. That's gracious hospitality, making people feel like you are welcomed. This is me. This is my mess. I'm not perfect, so feel comfortable. Show hospitality without grumbling. Even when you don't want to do it, if God has told you to do it, say yes and do it with vigor. And if you fall on your face, get back up. He won't leave you there. And finally, strive to make a difference. As Mother Teresa said, you get closer to Christ by being closer to others. So start with just that one person. Put that one drop into somebody else's bucket. Be a bucket filler. And start with one person and put that one drop in the ocean, because without your drop, the ocean would be one drop less. Thank you.